We know there are different categories in Judaism. We know there are commandments, mitzvahs, aseh, positive commandments, as well as los aseh, negative commandments. And however, there's also another category, different categories of law, also known as ben adam lamakom, commandments between man and God, and ben adam lechavero, commandments between man and man, woman and woman, interpersonal. Dave, is it working?
Yeah. It's counting down.
Okay. So, and in fact, Kivud Avayim, as we mentioned yesterday, is a classic example where Kivud Avayim, honoring one's parents, as the Minchas Chinuch points out, is actually one of the few commandments that have, and we'll see throughout, there might be other examples as well, but Kivud Avayim, honoring one's parents, is a classic example of both a mitzvah ben adam l'makom and a mitzvah ben adam l'chavero. The ben adam l'makom, as the Gemara tells us in Kedushin, that we all have three creators, our parents and God. And in addition, we know parents are people too. We have mitzvahs to help them, get them a cup of water, get them things if they need help, etc. So we know Kivud Avayim has both aspects. And in fact, that's why, so when you go through the mitzvah of Kivud Avayim, you have to go through and discuss.
Don't put your hands so high when you go across and take your space out. You got it, yeah. You do it good going there, but coming back, you come like this and you get this hand in there. Good job. I don't know.
So
I'll have to talk to the editor.
So how do you know whether a mitzvah, sometimes it's a mitzvah between man and God and a mitzvah between man and man? Well, some mitzvahs are obvious. Putting on tefillin, but we're going to do it in a couple of minutes, putting on a talis. But there are other mitzvahs that involve people. So, but certain times you can have mitzvahs involving people, but they're not necessarily a mitzvah ben adam lechavero. Obviously, let's say Kedushin, the Rambam seems to, getting married, he seems to classify as a mitzvah between man and God. Even though there are people involved in the mitzvah, yet the focus of the mitzvah is the institution of marriage, not the ben adam lechavero. Of course, there'll be ben adam lechavero aspects when you're dancing for the chassan and kal and other things. But so if it doesn't have people, it's clear that it's not a mitzvah ben adam lechavero. But if it involves people, then we have to see which one it is. So one of the indicators the Rambam tells us is if you make a bracha before you do it, it's a mitzvah ben adam l'makom. It's like kedusha, we make a bracha. But let's say kivud avayim, or giving tzedakah, or any mitzvah ben adam l'chavero, Chazal never instituted a bracha on. The rabbis never made a bracha. So kivud avayim, we don't have a bracha. So at first glance, so that explains, if you assume Kivud Avayim is a mitzvah ben adam l'chavero, so we understand why there's no bracha. We don't make a blessing before we service our parents. We do them, we help them out, whatever the realm and the characterizations of Kivud Avayim is. So according to the opinion that it's a mitzvah ben adam l'makom, so how come we don't make a bracha? So that's what the Rashba and other commentators point out. There are other rules why we don't make brachas. Yeah.
Okay. Again, tell me, what is Adam HaMakom?
Adam HaMakom is commandments between man and God, and it's opposed to commandments between people, ben adam l'chavero, between interpersonal. So they point out there's another principle, whether something is nitan l'mechila, something is able to, could you be mochel on the mitzvah? So for instance, we know, you know what? We have a mitzvah of davening soon to put on tefillin and talis. You know what? I think I'll be mochel this morning. I'll say no tefillin today, or no talis, no Shabbos. We'll have a lot of fans of that if that was true. But a mitzvah ben adam l'makom, there's no concept of being mochel on something. You're not the balabas. You have to be in control of something to forego it. But so a mitzvah between man and God, it's up to God to forego, not for me. But a mitzvah ben adam l'chavero, that already, the person who you're involved with, they have a right under certain circumstances to be mochel. So for instance, Kibbud Av V'Eim. We know we have a concept, a melech, a king cannot be mochel on his kavod. Even though that's a discussion, not for now, but we'll see, maybe he can. But the halach is a melech cannot be mochel on his kavod because it's the kavod of the melech. He has to keep a certain dignity and a certain type of relationship. But the simple halacha about a parent is ha'av can be mochel. A father or mother can forego their honor. They could say, it's okay, you don't have to do that for me. It's okay, you can sit there, whatever the foregoing the honor might be. Because since they're the balabas over the mitzvah, they're telling you you're honoring them. They could tell you under the right conditions that you don't have to do it. So there's a concept of foregoing one's honor. So therefore, even if you assume it's a mitzvah makom, which normally doesn't have mechila, but since kibbud av v'eim is a mix, so they point out since a parent could say thanks but no thanks, you don't have to do whatever we're talking about. You don't have to get me a glass of water. You don't have to go shopping for me or whatever. So since there are cases where a parent can be mochel, even though it could be a mitzvah between man and God, nevertheless Chazal never instituted a bracha. But they point out that perhaps another reason is the Yerushalmi writes, the Jerusalem Talmud writes, that mechila zu kavodo. That really, it's nothing to do with mechila. They're not being mochel, but does it make sense? Your parent is not thirsty. No, I don't care. Here's this Coca-Cola. I want you to drink. I brought you this Coke. You have to have it now. It's not a matter of being mochel on the kavod. It's the point is ritzono shel adam zuhi kavodo. It's not an issue of being mochel. When you do something what they want, that's covered. You're doing something they don't want or are interested in, that's not the covered. It's not that the mochel on the covered. It's the concept is that they don't. That is showing kibbud av v'eim by certain times not doing things that they don't want. But those are so that's part of the discussion when you discuss the aspect of kibbud av v'eim. You always have to analyze from both angles whether it's a mitzvah between man and God. A mitzvah b'nam or chaveri Jeff.
Is it true that I think a Kohen cannot be mochel in his covered? Is that right?
Well, that's
like a king.
Yes.
Well, that's a discussion. Depends what we're talking about. But I'll tell you where it comes up, where it's a major question. Is let's say you have a Kohen in shul because the halach is we know because of the kidashto, which is a mitzvah min Torah, a biblical mitzvah, you have to give covered to the Kohen. So that's a given. You have to give cover to. In fact, in some yeshivas, when they have the public kitchens, the public dining rooms, people eat in synagogue, eat in the yeshiva. So some have a Kohen line. They don't have to wait online. They go straight to the front because the Kohen. Part of the covenant of giving a Kohen is they go. Maybe we should start a Levi line here. That's something else. But either way, so the Kohen. But there's a concept we know. You give them the first aliyah. The first one, Rishus HaKohen, when you Birkas HaMazon, you usually call on them. So the question is, can a Kohen be mochel, or can you force the Kohen to be mochel, which seems to be the practice in some places, where what I mean is, let's say you have a simcha going on, or not a simcha, well, it depends what a yard site is. Feast or fast, that's a separate discussion. But assuming you have people coming in for a yard site or something, and you have a Kohen in shul, but you want to send a Kohen out, so that's a major issue. So again, different Rabbanim there's room within halacha for both, but some are very strict and say you mevatel a mitzvah aseh v'kidashto. Every time you send a Kohen, maybe you could, maybe you can't, but they say you mevatel a mitzvah aseh. You have an opportunity to fulfill a mitzvah in our Torah, giving the Kohen the covered, and then you send the Kohen out and you give other. So those who are very strongly against it, and then some, then the different minhagim. So depending which shul you're in, you'll find some will send the Kohen out. And so, maybe some make a distinction during the week on Shabbos, but that's part of the mitzvah of the kidashto. So, right, Kohen, if what you mean is a Kohen can't be mochel on his cover, meaning a Kohen, you know what? I'll be mochel. I'm going to go to the cemetery today, or I'm going to marry a grusha. If that's what you mean, a Kohen can't be mochel.
But if it's assumed that a Kohen cannot be mochel on his cover that you give to him, that suggests that a cover you give to a Kohen is not bein adam la'kaveru, it's bein adam la'ma.
Right, no, in fact, that's right.
The kahuna that you're honoring.
Very good, that's a famous, right, Jeff is making a very good point, that the chasam is relating to the chasam sofer. You got that? I said Jeff, I said.
Yes.
So So it says the Chassan Sofer had there was a famous question where it happens all the time. Someone comes into shul, you don't know who they are, and you say, "Are there any Kohanim in the house? Any doctors in the house? Any Kohanim?" And the guy says he's a Kohen. We don't know the guy from Adam. Like, so you call up and you give the person an aliyah. He gets up, and then whatever. Then you find out either right after, before you found out he was lying. He really wasn't. He always wanted it. He always wanted to know what is it like to get that first aliyah. So the point being is, so the Chassan Sofer, right? There's no problem because the Kidashto means giving honor to the Kohen. The fact, why did you give this person the first aliyah? As Jeff said, and I like to point that out at my table, I'm asking the Kohen to bench not because of their specific covet, it's because it's the institution of the kahuna. You're giving covet to the concept of the priesthood, not the specific Kohen, and therefore it's on the institution. That's what the same thing is on the institution of marriage. I don't mean on the Seinfeld episodes making fun of it, but in terms of the concept, isn't necessarily a mitzvah it's the concept of marriage. A person, you're building a bayis nema, you're going to have children, and you're imitating God, you're populating the world. So the concept, that's what I was pointing out in the beginning. You have different mitzvahs that might involve people, but fundamentally they're considered commandments between man and God, because it's the institution of kahuna on the institution of marriage.
It's the same thing with Melech. It's the institution of kingship. It's the role, the office.
Right.
But the question is, can a Kohen choose not to duchen it?
Right. So then he can. So the general rule is a Kohen could choose a Kohen can't stay in shul and not duchen. A Kohen has a choice not to walk out before duchening. In fact, there was someone here. There are discussions about what type of sins pursue you from doing the avodah. So I'm not saying but one person felt that he wasn't fit to be giving other people brachas, and he used to walk out. I'm not saying he asked the question. That's his own personal feeling. But the point being is, in terms of this halacha in general, we know. There's a mitzvah of Birkas Kohanim. To answer your question, you have to give you a little background info, like most answers, that there's a concept of Birkas Kohanim. In fact, the concept is a mitzvah. We all know about it. Cholomai Tzukis, how many thousand Jews, how many thousand Kohanim and Jews were at the Kotel. And my wife is telling me, I don't remember anymore, but a high number. So there's a concept, there's a mitzvah of Birkas Kohanim. Actually, people don't realize there's two parts to the mitzvah. There's a mitzvah the Kohen to bless the people, but there's a mitzvah on the Kohen to the people to accept the bracha also from the Kohen. It's a two-way street. But either way, so really the Torah tells us there's a mitzvah Birkas Kohanim. It doesn't give us any exact time and moment. So we have the Stipler rights, we have a general principle. Anytime the Torah gives us a mitzvah, but doesn't give us the exact amount, 6 times a day, once a week, once a year, we assume once a day, every day. That's the general principle. So therefore, the question is, why don't we do Birkas Kohanim every day? In fact, in Eretz Yisrael, they do Birkas Kohanim every day. And in fact, in certain Sephardic Kehilas, even in Chutz La'aretz, I believe, they do Birkas Kohanim every day. So why don't we do Birkas Kohanim in Chutz La'aretz every day? So that's a major discussion. In fact, it seems to be shrouded in mystery, because we know many Gedolim, the Vilna Gaon, as well as Rav Chaim Volozhin, try to read. The Vilna Gaon one day said, I don't understand this. That's it. Tomorrow morning we're going to get up and do Birkas Kohanim. I can't come up with a good reason why we're not doing it. And I think that was the night they came by, and there was a Maisa with the Hasidim, and they put him in jail that night, so there was no Birkas Kohanim. And they tell you a story with the Vilna Gaon. So while he was in jail, I guess he was with the shamish, the person who goes around. He says, I need a Timmy, I need a coffee now. He said, you're in jail, you can't. Okay, let me tell you how to get out. So he told him how to go through the pipes, and he told him how to break out of jail and come back with his coffee. But either way, so the Vilna Gaon tried to do it, and it didn't work out. Then Rav Chaim Volozhin, one of his Talmidim, also wants to institute a big fire broke out in Vilna that night. So they took it as a simmer min hashamayim, a sign from heaven. They don't know why, for whatever reason, they don't want Birkas Kohanim every day in Chutz La'aretz. But al pi halacha, what is the basis for not having it? So people give some difficult reasons. One, I think the Beis Yosef quotes in the Kolbo, since the Kohanim had a minute to go to the mikvah before they did Birkas Kohanim, so in places where it's very cold, and this is before the heated mikvahs, and therefore the Kohanim didn't like going to the mikvah when it was 20 degrees below, so somehow the custom stops. That's difficult because you don't have to go to the mikvah. It's difficult to say you don't do a mitzvah min Torah because of a minute of not going to the mikvah. Others point out that the reason is that they get discussed whether Birkas Kohanim is deraisa d'Rabbanan. Maybe since it's only d'Rabbanan to a Molinia, but we assume not that way. We assume Birkas Kohanim is deraisa.
How can it be d'Rabbanan? I mean, in the Bible it says beferish.
No, it's very good. So Rabbi Yaakov Emden, they discuss, because if you look at the Bible, they point out that Aaron is blessing the people in conjunction with karbanos. So of course, the concept of Birkas Kohanim is deraisa, biblical, but that's only in the context when they were bringing karbanos. Perhaps today we don't have karbanos. That's what they assume. Maybe it's only. That's why Rabbi Selevan pointed out, where do we do Birkas Kohanim? We do it in the middle of Shmona Esrei, like we do like shofar. We don't eat matzah in the middle of Shmona Esrei. We don't shake lulav close in Hallel. Because why? Because we say the Gemara tells us tefillah b'makom karbanos, that today tefillah takes the place of karbanos. It's not just a nice drasha, which it is, but he says it's a halakha concept. And that's why specifically he says we do the Birkas Kohanim in the context of ritzei, in the avoda, to show that we want to keep tefillah b'makom karbanos. Birkas Kohanim retains its biblical character today. So we assume it's deraisa. But what's the best halachic reason I heard why don't we have Birkas Kohanim is because the issue is that the Amarta Lahem, that the luck is, it's only a chiyuv. This gets to Dr. Shreg's point that it's only a chiyuv if you're asked to go up or if you're told to go up. You announce Kohanim, and in fact, that's why it doesn't really make a difference. If you're an Ashkenaz Kohen in a Sephardi shul, and they call up the Kohanim, that's it, you're up there. You have to go up. And similarly, someone gets up in an Ashkenaz shul and announces the Kohanim to come up, you have no choice. In other words, what the Ramah writes, we're not shari b'simcha, we're not on the level of simcha today. Birkas Kohanim is a bracha of peace, and peace is always associated with simcha, with joy. We're not on the madreg of simcha anymore. We're in Chutz La'aretz, we're in Golus, and only we save it for Yom Tov, not even Shabbos, because Shabbos it's only a one-day break in the week. Our mind is still on business, other things. We need a Yom Tov, a Shalosh Regalim, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. We need to do Birkas Kohanim, but we have to be Sharai B'Simcha. We have to be B'Simcha. In fact, that's why there's an interesting dispute between the Machaber and the Ramah, the Svardim and the Ashkenaz, on what happens if you're a single Kohen, meaning you're not married, because we know the Gemara says whoever is not married, Sharai below Simcha. You can't be happy, totally happy without marriage. So I guess that's the Machlokas, the Machaber Ramah. Svardim hold that if you're single, you can't be happy, and the Ramah says no, even single Ashkenazim can be happy, and therefore a single person can go up and do Birkas. That's the minhag among Ashkenazim. Even a single person goes up. That's why the issue with Avelis also. If you're an Avel, you don't go up and do Birkas. If you're a Kohen and you're an Avel, you don't go up and do Birkas Kohanim. The question is how long, whether it's Shiva, Shloshim, Yud Beis, there's different minhagim. But the concept, well, you're an Avel and Shiva, because you're in Avelos, you're not the Simcha, so obviously you can't go up and do Birkas Kohanim.
So does that mean that you have to leave the room when they call up the Kohanim?
Yeah, it's a case where if you're an Avel, yeah, so either, right, if you're an Avel, depends when it is, you wouldn't be in Shul, but if it's Shiva, but right, but then it would be if you're, and then it gets into if you don't, then it gets in if you're single and you're a Sephardi, you mean?
Yes.
Right, no, so, right, I'm not sure what the minhag among the Sephardim are.
What if you were married?
I don't know if the single people
you were
maybe
married.
They hold the obligation isn't on them. They could hold it's not that you have to walk out. That if the part of the obligation of right, but then it would.
Yeah, but there's a visual here.
No, you're right. No,
people look and go, well, he's a Kohen.
No, you're right. No, I agree. No, I haven't been in a Sephardi show. It's a good question. I mean, even among Sephardi, we might have different minhagim. But right, but it would make sense. That's what. So getting back. So that's why don't we do Birkas Kohanim every day? Really, if we called up, you'd have to. But since you don't. the chiyuv is only once you're called up, then the chiyuv begins. So therefore, based on the Ramah, since we're not on the level of simcha, l'chatchila, since we can't do the bracha appropriately, so therefore we don't put ourselves in a situation where we have to do it every day. But push comes to shove, if you were called up, then you would have to go up. So in terms of either walking, most shuls don't call up every day. That's the minhag Ashkenaz. But if you are and you're not going to do it, whether you, based on aveilus, based on you determine you can't do it, so then it would be appropriate to walk out beforehand, or else you're being motzi laz on your kahuna. As Jeff was saying, you're putting people. What do you mean? This guy's not a kohen? Like how come he's not getting up there? So in terms of that, but once you're called up, then really you should go up. Even if you don't know how to do it, just go up and follow the crowd. Then it's a question whether Shomei Kahona works on Birkas Kohana. You can just listen to someone else.
Does the converse hold? In other words, let's say that you are a Kohen and you wish to Duchanan, but the synagogue you're in doesn't call you. It's not a custom. Can you Duchan?
No, so that you can't Duchan without
called.
Right. There's no, and that's even on general. Even when we do go up, there's no obligation unless you're called up. So it doesn't even kick in until you're called up. So you can't get up and start doing Duchaning and also if the tzibur doesn't want it.
Yes,
right. Right. So it wouldn't be right. So it wouldn't be appropriate. Right. So they point out that Alan, you had a question, or are you just fixing your tefillin? Okay. So they point out that so therefore a Kohen, so there are different Kohanim. So in terms of being Kohen mochel on their kavod, again, so if we're talking about the negative commandments like not being able to go to a cemetery or going to a cemetery for someone who's not one of the 7 relatives, then obviously you can't be mochel on your kavod, or the issues of who you can marry, but in terms of the positive mitzvahs, so in terms of in shul, obviously if you're not going to go up, then the best thing I'd say is to walk out. I guess in theory one is, in terms of benching an aliyah you can, because then either you're mevatel or mitzvahs of the kiddashto, and in benching, again, so there are different issues anyway in terms of who you're going, even though strictly speaking, a Talmud Chacham really is kodem a Kohen. A Talmud Chacham goes before a Kohen. The minhag is that they give it to a Kohen. The minhag Bisman is still to give it to maybe because of that reason of you'll think the person's not a Kohen or someone is. But
how do you know a person is a Talmud Chacham?
Exactly, that's what we discussed yesterday. But it's easier to tell a Talmud Chacham than a tzaddik. A tzaddik's a much harder measuring stick. I think if this person's giving a share on kosher tube, I think that's no. So that's it. But either way, so it's hard to find a definition of a tzaddik. Talmud Chacham, at least it's more objective in terms of a measuring stick, asking them questions, etc. So those are the different. So we know we have 2 basic categories. We have categories of mitzvahs. Ben Adam Lamakom, mitzvahs between man and God, and mitzvahs ben Adam Chaveiro. We know Kibbud Av V'Em is an interesting mix between both. On one hand, they're your creators. There's a concept of Adam Lamakom, and on the other hand, there are also people, and therefore there's a concept of Adam Chaveiro, and that's what we pointed out. We have to explain according to both sides. If there's no bracha, so according to the Rambam, ben Adam Chaveiro, so you don't make a bracha. According to others, so then you have to come on to other reasons, that it's a nitan or machila, that a parent has the right under certain conditions. There's a mitzvah of kibbud av v'em, and there's a mitzvah of bizayon and yira. They're 2 different things. You can't be mochel on bizayon, perhaps, that when your person's denigrating a parent, that might be never permissible. But in terms of withdrawing honor, we'll see that's something else, and we'll see also in that context as well. That's the whole ma'isa with David and Bathsheba. We'll have to go into another time when David was dancing with the Aaron and his wife wasn't happy with it. He felt the king, it's not appropriate, a king dancing around. I don't know, maybe something, his clothing was popping, whatever the exact issue was. Exactly, who was?
Michal.
Yeah, in fact, so you don't necessarily learn how to treat a wife from that incident, but we learn different halachas in terms of what b'makam mitzvah, bizayon, in terms terms of that. And then, and that's the concept of marriage, even though it involves people, but it's the institution of marriage. So it's a mitzvah of kedusha, it's a mitzvah b'adam l'makom, and so to Birkas Kohanim, as we point, that's not just the melech as well, but the Kohen. It's the institution of marriage that we're giving covet to, and not necessarily the specific Kohen.